أعوذ بالله الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Before the break, we were talking about the importance of responding and response as one of the most important area in the disaster management cycle. Now, we said that there are many activities that normally happen during these response activities. The first one is we need to search and rescue to save lives. We need to give first aid and medical services to the injured. We need to evacuate. And evacuation basically means moving from one place, the place that has been affected, the place of high risk to a place of low risk. Then we need to create an emergency shelter, like the tents. We need to ensure that we distribute food and water. There need to be emergency communication among the stakeholders. The police and the army, they need to provide security. Then there is a temporary restoration of electricity and water. So we can have, for example, a generator. If the electricity has been permanently cut off, we can have generators. As for the water, we can have tanks as we are waiting for the permanent supply. Then rapid damage assessment. We can start assessing the extent of the damages to the infrastructure. Now, another important aspect is the coordination during emergency response. So when we are responding in times of disaster, we need to respond effectively and efficiently. Now, effective response requires coordination among multiple actors. So remember we said that during a time of disaster, we have many stakeholders. So there needs to be good coordination between them. Number one, the government agencies. And this includes both at the national and the local levels. We need to coordinate with them. The police and security services, fire and rescue services, health facilities, the hospitals and the clinics, humanitarian organizations, the NGOs, the local authority, community groups, volunteers, international organizations. So all these are the multiple actors during the time of disaster. So somebody can ask, what is coordination important? Is it really important? Yes, it matters a lot. So because without coordination, organization may duplicate activities. So there might be what is known as izdiwajia. Izdiwajia basically means the government and the local authority, they are doing the same things, copy paste. Because there is no communication, there is no coordination. So we want each and every stakeholder to focus on one thing. And this is what is known as efficiency. So, and also, if there is no coordination, what might happen? We might leave important areas uncovered or compete for limited resources. So that is why we need an effective vote. We need an effective coordination. You come late and you disturb the class. You come late and you disturb the class. You just come for the attendance. Now, emergency response activities. Emergency response priorities. So when we are responding during the time of disasters, هناك الأولويات. Now, when we are talking about priorities, we are basically saying who comes first? Who should be the first one in the list? That is the meaning of priority. Ma'aman nabda. So during the time of disaster, response priorities generally include immediate phase. These ones are the top of the list. This is what we need to deal with. Number one, before doing any other thing, we need to save lives. Life is important than property, than any other thing. So number one, you have to ensure that we save lives. Then number two, search and rescue. We search for people who are lost, people who are under the debris, you know? So we have to search and rescue lives. Then emergency medical care. We have to ensure that we give first aid to the injured people. Then another thing is evacuation. Evacuation basically meaning moving from high risk areas to low risk areas. Now, when we have finished with number one in the list, what needs to happen first, then we go to the short-term phase. So the short-term phase, this might be some days after the disaster, 1 day, 2 days, or 3 days after the disaster. So this is where we have to ensure we have enough and frequent supply of food and water. We can also have temporary shelter, sanitation, protection from the police, and also communication. This happens at this phase. Then now stabilization. This is the long-term phase. Not really long-term phase, but it can be maybe after a month after the disaster or some 2 weeks after the disaster. So here we restore essential services, electricity, the water, assess damage. We assess the damage. Assess means we evaluate the extent of the damage, support affected communities. We support them by giving them food, giving them shelter. Then we prepare for the next phase, which is recovery. So the response phase should gradually transition into recovery. So this response should gradually lead us to the next phase of our disaster management cycle, which is now the disaster recovery. So this is the next phase after the response. So what is disaster recovery? So disaster recovery refers to the process of restoring, underline this word, of restoring and improving, underline the word improving. These are the two most important things. So we are restoring and improving the functioning of communities, organizations, infrastructure, livelihoods, and services after a disaster. So we are restoring, we are trying to bring back to life. That is the meaning, to restore. If something is damaged, you can also think about restoring as repairing and improving. Improving basically is all about making something better. So recovery may include restoring public services. So when you're talking about the public services, maybe we are talking about the transportation system. During the disaster, maybe the transportation system was affected, but now we are restoring it, fixing it. Maybe the water system was affected. We are fixing it. Number two, repairing infrastructure, the roads, the drainage system, the bridges. We are repairing. Then we are also supporting affected families, those who have been affected by the disaster. We give them the necessary support. Restoring businesses, because during the disaster, some businesses, some shops were damaged, some shops were not working. So gradually, we are restoring the businesses. Life is getting back to normal. The buying, the selling, the economic activities. Rebuilding livelihoods. Rebuilding livelihoods, because during the disaster, maybe somebody lost everything. Everything. So we need to rebuild their livelihood by providing them with sources of income, mathalan, providing psychosocial support. And this is where the psychologists, they come. Because during a disaster, sometimes you find that we have the vulnerables, the women, the elderly, the disabled. Those are the ones that are always affected a lot during the disaster. So they will need some talking, they need some guidance, They'll need some support because sometimes most of them are stressed, depressed, and tormented. So they need that kind of psychosocial support. Then reestablishing education and healthcare. Then also we restore the schools, we restore the hospitals and the clinic. So recovery can take months or years depending on the scale of the disaster. So if the disaster was not that big, it can take a few months. But you can imagine, like in Turkey, during the earthquake that happened in Turkey, it took around 1 year to bring things back to normal. You can imagine during the time of tsunami, it took some period of time before people recovered, you know. Now, after recovery, we have something that it's somehow related to recovery, but they are somehow different. And this is what is known as rehabilitation. So, ماذا نعني برehabilitation? Rehabilitation refers to measures taken. The key word is measures. هناك بعض الإجراءات. It refers to measures taken. Why do we take these measures? To restore basic services, facilities, livelihoods, and community functioning after a disaster. It focuses mainly on helping affected people and system return to functioning condition. So this one includes repairing school. That is why I said it is closely related to recovery. It is closely related to recovery. Repairing schools, restoring water systems, reopening health facilities, repairing roads, supporting affected business, restoring agricultural activities. So the key thing is rehabilitation helps communities recover functionality after disruption. So it helps the communities get back. It helps the community function as it used to. Now, the key difference now between recovery and rehabilitation. So they seem to be the same, these two words, but there is a slight difference between recovery and rehabilitation. And in an exam, sometimes they can ask you also the difference between rehabilitation and recovery. So rehabilitation focuses on restoring basic, the key word is underline this, basic functioning. Mathalan, repairing a damaged school so students can return to classes. Yeah, we are just repairing, we are not fixing. Like we are just putting the windows and the tables, chairs. We are trying to fix temporarily. That is the meaning of rehabilitation. It is like the road. Sometimes you find that the road, we don't build a new road. There are some holes in the road. We just try to put something on those holes on the road, but we are not building the whole road. So that is what is known as rehabilitation. But on the contrary, recovery has a broader and longer term focus. So rehabilitation is short term, but recovery is broader and longer term focus on restoring and improving community well-being. So for example, in the case of the school, rebuilding the school from zero, we are building a better school than the school that was there before. So we are building a new school. But rehabilitation, it is the same school. We are just trying to do some few repairs. So rebuilding schools while improving their disaster resistance and educational facilities. Therefore, rehabilitation restore basic functions, while recovery restore and improve overall functioning and well-being. Now, this is the key difference also between the two. So when you're talking about recovery, focuses on restoring basic functioning, while the recovery is broader. So if you look at the rehabilitation, for example, during the what? During the disaster, the school, look at the roof of it was affected. So during rehabilitation, we are just trying to fix the what? We are just trying to fix the what? The roof again. But now in the next picture here, there are many activities we are doing for the long term. Look at the quality of the school now. We are deciding to build a good, resilient school. We have furnished the school, you know, ila ghairi dhalik. So that is the difference between recovery and. Now, after recovery, you have the reconstruction. What is the reconstruction now? Reconstruction is the process of rebuilding damaged or destroyed infrastructure, facilities, housing, and community systems after a disaster. It may involve rebuilding houses, reconstructing roads, rebuilding schools, blah, blah, ila ghairi dhalik. So reconstruction should not simply replace what was destroyed. It should reduce the risk of future disaster. So when we are reconstructing a house, we should reconstruct it better than it was before. So it should not just be a matter, oh, let us just rebuild quickly. No. We are reconstructing it such that when the disaster strikes again, at least the building can be resilient. You know? So when you're talking about reconstruction, it's the process of rebuilding houses, reconstructing roads, rebuilding schools, restoring hospitals. So that is the meaning. After disaster, look what happened here after disaster. But when you're talking of reconstruction, we are ensuring that we even build better facilities that were not there. That is the meaning of reconstruction. Now, build back better. That is the same idea of reconstruction. Build back better, better than it was. So build back better means using recovery and reconstruction as an opportunity to do what? To improve the infrastructures, system, and community resilience, rather than simply restoring the previous situation. So it's not just about copy paste. It's not all about just simply restoring. No, it is all about improving the infrastructure. So, for example, instead of rebuilding a school exactly as it was before a flood, that is the old approach. You rebuild the same school in the same vulnerable location. But build back better means rebuild using flood-resistant designs, improved drainage, safer location, emergency exits, and stronger infrastructure. So that is the difference between, you know, all the old approach of just building and the build back better. You build it back, you build it back with better facilities. Okay. Now, reconstruction and sustainable development. Disaster reconstruction should be connected to long-term development. Sustainable development is tanmiyatul mustadama, long-term development. So the important consideration include what? When we are reconstructing, we need to ensure resilient infrastructure. You are building a road that can stay for 40 years, 20 years. You don't want to build a road, then after 2 months, this is what happened to the engineers, the project managers. They are given a project because they are corrupted, poor workmanship. After 3 months, the road is not okay because the road was built without a drainage system. Sustainable construction, environment. So we need to include all these to ensure that we guarantee for our future generations. Now, what is the project life cycle? Of course, now we want to combine the disaster management cycle and the project life cycle. You all know about the typical project life cycle has these 5 things: project identification, planning and design, implementation, monitoring and control, closure and evaluation. For each and every phase of this project cycle, you have to ensure that the elements of the disaster management cycle are put into consideration. When you are, for example, when you're planning and design, you've been given a project, you need to plan and design. So you need to plan and design when you're designing a house, when you're designing a road as a project manager, when you're implementing a project, you have to ensure that you put the elements of disaster management in consideration. So disaster risk in project identification and planning. So during project identification here, project identification, what should you do as a project manager? Ask yourself, what hazards exist in the project location? This is the location I want to build my house. This is the location of the project. What hazards might be there? The disasters that might strike the project. Who or what might be exposed there in that location? What vulnerabilities exist there? What capacities are available in terms of what skills, knowledge? Could the project create new risk? Sometimes you find that the project creates is also a problem. The project is a problem in itself. Now, during planning, what should project managers do? They should conduct risk assessment, select safer locations, establish contingency plans. As a project manager, you should have plan A, B, and C. Allocate risk management budget. When you're budgeting as a project manager, always ensure that you have the budget for risk. Maybe you are building a house, road, and maybe it's raining, floods are there, it's going to affect your project. You need to have an extra budget for that. Include safety standard in your project. So the key principle is identify risk before committing major resources. So when you are here in the first, when you are in the identification phase, always identify the risk before committing, before putting your money in the project. Now, during implementation, disaster risk management should include compliance with safety standard. Ensure that the people you are working with in your project, they are complying with the safety standard. Always monitor the hazards. Have the emergency procedures in your project. Worker safety, the people who are working with you, they need to be safe. Environmental protection, ensure that your project does not pollute the environment. Continuity plans, have a plan to continue. For example, you're having a project and it rains. Your project has to stop for some time. You need to have a plan for that. For example, it is raining, your project has stopped for 3 weeks. What is the plan for continuing with this project? Then you have to regularly assess the risks. So project managers should monitor whether changing conditions are creating new risk, right? Now, during the monitoring and evaluation stage, what should happen? So projects should continuously monitor disaster-related risk. So monitoring, regularly tracking risk, preparedness, safety, and project performance. Evaluation, you need to assess whether disaster risk measures were effective. Learning, using lessons from incidents, exercise, and evaluation to improve future. Good managers, good project managers, they always learn. They learn if you're a project manager, after the end of every project, when you're closing the project, you need to have a notebook to learn so that you don't do the same mistake in another project. Now, so this is how you can integrate the disaster management cycle in the project management cycle. So it is clearly explained here, actually. Now, what is our summary? Lastly, we are basically saying what? The disaster management cycle, it's a continuous process, as we have just said. And the key lessons we are learning is that prevention reduces disaster. Al-waqaya khairu min al-ilaj. Mitigation reduces potential impacts. Ila ghairi dhalik. So that is the end of our lesson. If you have any question, you can ask. So I'm going to take attendance. I need to take a picture. If you have, so you'll get the lesson in all the lesson are in the YouTube channel. So even this lesson, I will record it and you'll find it in the YouTube channel. So I've already taken the attendance. So let us meet next week. If you don't have any question, we still have 2 more lessons remaining. We still have 2 more lessons plus a research. So I will, within the week, I will send you the research assignment. The research is 20 marks. So the research plus the research is 20, attendance is 20, and the final exam will be out of 60. So we still have 2 more lessons. There are very many things to cover. So I will only cover the key areas. The remaining areas, you will have to do what? To write a research about it. So I think that's the end of our lesson. Is there any question? There are some students, they are coming now. This is Sarah. Sarah, were you here at the beginning of the lesson, Sarah?
Master, I'm listening to you, but there is some internet connection.
Yeah, because I'm just seeing you. Let me just a minute. Okay, that's the end of our lesson. Let's meet next week, inshallah. Wassalam.